Hello and welcome back to another Space Engineers mod showcase video. In today's video it's going to be a little bit different because we're looking at the Adaline Stiletto Hover Bike. But we're not just looking at that. Oh no, because this design is quite simplistic in how it's made, I thought I'd load it in the abandoned mine racetrack, and I'll also show off some of the mods that were used to create the hover bike. So this hover bike uses an array of different mods, from helicopter thrusters to hover engines, which leads to this rather fancy design, which you see right here. Going around the outside, we can see all the modded engines, the modded thrusters, and of course if I was to hop down underneath, we can see the good old hover engines. It's a very nice design. It's a very small design actually. If I bring up F10 and find the hover bike, there we go, it's only 44 blocks in total, so this is absolutely tiddly. That is the bike in all its glory. It has no actions on the hotbar for you to use. It's simply made for a racetrack, which is why I've loaded it in the abandoned mine racetrack. But before I go any further, should we take a look at some of the mods that were used to create this bike? So I've set up a display screen here showing all the mods used. We got the Azimuth passenger seat and open cockpit, the power mod pack, encased gyroscopes with research tree integration, the helicarrier thrusters, which are those giant things you see in the background, and of course the good old hover engines. So I'm just going to get out of that and come at that in a minute, and let's take a look at some of these things. So these right here are from the power mod pack. There's some very fancy looking reactors that take uranium and generate a lot of power. So going into this and actually finding the reactor, they generate quite a large amount of power, and we've even got a little tiny battery as well to be used, which is that thing on the end. That one is hovering, but there's not too much I can do about that. Moving across, we then have the passenger seats, which come in different varieties. We've got this seat right here, which is just plain and simple. You can sit in it. Oh, I can't exactly do that, but we can sit in it all nice. We then got one with like a fighter controls, so if I was to look down, got like a fighter seat. We then got a separate one which is slightly different, and then moving across we got one which is sitting at the far back of the steel block, and then we got the two which is sitting at the very edges of these steel blocks. Moving across, we've of course got the hover engines, which if you've been modding for a long time you probably are familiar with. You just put them underneath your ship and it will hover off the ground. Unlike thrusters, you can't just fly off into space. It will just keep you from bouncing into the ground and destroying yourself. Turning around and moving away, we have these bloody great thrusters which are sitting here, which are from the heli thruster things. My size for comparison, sitting in the middle there, is very small. Coming to the big one at the back there, again, I am tiny in comparison. Why you would ever need thrusters this big, I do not know. We have down here the encased gyroscope. So instead of having the traditional gyroscope, which is one of these little blob things, which if I was to plop there, put there, doesn't look too nice, you could then have a encased gyroscope and build steel blocks around it without it ruining the design. We then have these tiny little small ship engines. These are the V8 engines, which are for the small ship. I'm not going to go into too much detail of these mods, so the power they generate and the power they consume I won't be covering in this video because it's mainly about the Stiletto Hover Bike. But yes, the mods that are used with the Hover Bike are rather impressive. I just wanted to show that off because these things are bloody massive. Anyway, let's go back to the actual topic of this video, which is the Stiletto Hover Bike. Let's get in and go for a little ride. Bring up my HUD, let's just go to a new tab. We have 9 hours of power sitting here. Moving around, that dramatically drops. Now with this bike, it's highly recommended to have block destruction turned off. And you also want to have thruster damage turned off, because otherwise this could be a little problematic. I've also found that if you leave thruster damage and block damage turned on, and you're in a survival world, it tends to crash the game. It could just be a problem with the engines, because it did happen once I put uranium into the reactor, the game just suddenly crashed, but still loading it into creative mode has no problems whatsoever. So left and right is pretty responsive. Pressing space, that's how high we can go, and we can just clip the ground if I hold C to go down. But if I was to hold space and just let go, we're not going to touch the ground because of the hover engines. Let's go for a little ride around this racetrack, shall we? So you can see, holding forwards, we max out our power. And this thing is a very speedy little craft, which has a lot of drifting potential. So if you like Initial D, feel free to add some music. Yes, going around here, we have some incredible drifts. So you can't exactly hold down forwards and hope to go exceptionally fast around this track. You're going to have to feather it a little bit if you want to retain control of the hover bike. It's still a nifty little thing. It's one thing that I do want to have in Space Engineers as a standard vehicle, hover engines, and of course motorbikes. If you're familiar with Empyrean Galactic Survival, they have motorbikes in there, and they're pretty damn fun to use, and you can launch yourself into space with them. Yes, going around the track, any kind of lumps and bumps in this track will of course set the hover engines to go nuts, because they do generally work off a flat surface. And this track was made for wheel-based vehicles. So trying my best to go around here. It's probably better to go in first person. Running around here. We're still using maximum power, but let's just keep going around the track. A lot of the traps are going to be avoided because of course hover engines. But we can keep going there, avoiding that tree that is growing through the track. And then slow ourselves down. Try and get a good drift in there. Oop, hit the side. Come around to here. Probably going around this backwards, thinking about it, but whatever. And then we come round back to the start again, where where we have the giant engines sitting there, being all lovely. And that is that. It's a very simplistic design for you to basically spawn in and race with your friends with. So you can just go around. In fact, let's just go around this track once more. So going around the track again, let's try and do it properly. You want to feather it. And that is why block destruction is recommended to be turned off, because you can lose control of these vehicles very quickly. Going around here, trying to drift, avoiding that tree, avoiding that bush. Let's just keep going around. In fact, let's turn off the HUD for this one. It's a very nice little vehicle. We come around to here, we come into the abandoned mine. Ooh, try not to crash into the rock. Whoopsie. And then we go across. Because they're hover engines, it can sort of fly if you're going fast enough. Especially if you launch yourself off a cliff. Whoop. It's just realised what's happened. Let's try and get through here without touching them. Jolly good stuff. Back around the track once more. And then we come around again. Let's start drifting here. No, my drifting skills are terrible, and I've just launched myself once again. And all the way around. Let's go down here for once. So we can go down here, or not, because the hover engines won't let me go down that way. We can then just come back around to here. And done. So that's the abandoned mined racetrack, and this is the Adaline Stiletto Hover Bike. Because there's still a little bit of time in this video, because there's not too much to talk about, it's just a fun design to play around with in the creative world, let's look at some of the modded blocks. So the fusion reactor, Tiny 6, generates a maximum output of 1.5 megawatts, which is pretty decent. We then of course have the heli thrusters at Tiny, which require 2.8 megawatts per piece. That's the same for all of them. Then we got the hover engines are small, which require 210 kilowatts. And then we have the hover engines armor, which once again requires 210 kilowatts. And last but not least, we have the small encased gyroscope, which consumes 2 kilowatts. So that is that for the bike. What I do want to check is the power generation of the large engines. And what I'm going to do here is hop into one of these fancy chairs, come over to here and find the engines. Let's put them on maximum power. So there they are, spinning away. Let's take a look from the back. Oh, they are rather nice, aren't they? Just the sheer size of them. Could you imagine having 2 of those big ones on a tiny little helicopter for shits and giggles? But no, I wanted to check the power of the helis. So the Heli Thruster Solo X are large, which is these 2 large ones, consume 363 megawatts, which is rather a lot. And if we come over to the reactors, the modded reactors, the fusion reactor generates 900 megawatts, and the 2 tiny ones generate 45 megawatts on a large block grid. So that is basically that. The fusion reactor generates a massive amount of power, and the large thrusters consume a massive amount of power. So do remember that if you are going to be using them. As for their costs, let's go over to here, let's find the biggie boy. There we go. They cost a lot, okay? I'm not going to go through all the costs of these, but let's just say the big ones cost a lot. And then we have the reactor. Let's find the big one. Again, it costs a lot. But for what they are, I think they're worth it. So anyway, this is the abandoned mine racetrack, the Adaline Stiletto Hover Bike, and all the mods involved with it. So the hover bike and the racetrack will be in the description below if you wish to download and try it yourself. All the mods you see over there are included with the hover bike, so if you click on the link for that, you'll be given a list of all the mods to download from that page. And I'll be back with another showcase video some point soon. Bye bye.